What If the Avengers Assembled in 1602 is the 8th episode in What If Season 2. And this episode did not go the way I was expecting, however, I really enjoyed it. Because what I learned after watching it is that this does follow what the comics did in a sense. Where in the comics, it was created when Steve Rogers was sent back in time, causing a time rift in 1602. Causing characters from the Marvel Universe to start appearing in this time period, and then eventually rifts started to happen, and then the Watcher eventually created a pocket dimension to keep it alive. Which we did see the Watcher make pocket dimensions in Season 1, so I thought that was cool, and it pretty much happened the same way. Steve Rogers was sent back to 1602 when fighting Thanos and hitting the Time Stone, and then other characters from Marvel Universe started appearing in that time period. So I thought that was really interesting how it kind of did use the comic inspiration for it, and that it was still different in its own way because it was a what if series. But when we go into this episode, the episode started off with music that is from that time period, having the Marvel intro not be the typical Marvel music. So the royal family in this time period is an Asgardian one with Hela, Thor, and Loki. No Odin, surprisingly, though. And Loki's not a shit disturber, he's just a Shakespearean actor. But they really showed us how those portals work right away with having Loki almost get sucked into it, and then Hela being completely sucked into it, and Captain Carter being able to only save one of them. But in the end, it has Hela dropping Loki's scepter, which is her scepter in this, with the Time Stone in it instead of the Mind Stone because of what happened in this What If Infinity War episode, because Steve Rogers, while fighting Thanos, hit the Infinity Stone instead of the Gauntlet, which just caused him to be sent back in time. And it's funny how thick-headed Thor was in this, because once he became king, he didn't even see anything else other than that Captain Carter is a curse. Even though she was pulled to stop these portals from happening, she's failed time and time again. Instead of letting her try to figure out what's going on, he just wants to lock her away because he doesn't believe in her anymore. Even though you have Nick Fury and Scarlet Witch still trusting her and working behind Thor to make sure Captain Carter can do her job. But the world is collapsing during all of this, and it's because of the two time periods blending into one another. And I'm actually surprised how quickly Captain Carter was able to figure this out. She figures that it's the future and the past colliding with one another, and the reason she was summoned was because she was willing to help a universe that wasn't her own, showing how she's a true hero. Even if someone's in danger, she's gonna go help anyways. And I liked how she was able to hear the Watcher narrating and listening, and I feel like that's probably because of their connection from season 1, because most people can't do that other than like Deadpool. So I'm assuming it's because last season she had a connection with him, they went into his space, and after those events, she's now kind of attuned to him. But that led into some pretty fun moments when they're talking about the rifts happening and some places going, because Nick Fury references Nebula's observatory. We also get Isle of Ego, which is just a living island instead of a living planet. And then we also get Groot Groves, which is their wine grove. So Groot's location in this world is wine. But it does show that the other Marvel characters are around, even if we didn't get to see them. Also, Happy Hogan is playing the Hulk form of Happy Hogan again. I'm pretty sure that's why he got introduced in the Christmas episode, so that they could use him again and again. So I'm curious if we'll see him one more time by the time the season ends. In this world as well, Tony Stark is a drunk inventor, even having inventions on the wall for proto suits. And I liked how they did this because Tony loved Peggy saying all these like really big future words that he didn't have because they connected to him, and then it kind of all ties back to that they were pulled from the future and put into the past. So all those words do have meanings to him, and he understands them. He just doesn't know why. And I like how that leads into Captain Carter going to find Steve, Bucky, and Scott, because Steve Rogers in this world is Robin Hood, and Bucky and Scott are his merry men. And I like how they did this because of this being a tie into Infinity War. Bucky, Steve, and Scott were together in Civil War, and they're kind of like the outlaws, so kind of leading back into that outlaw ways. During this, Steve recognizes Peggy as his love because Peggy is from another universe, and there was one in his universe, of course. And I really like the words they exchanged here because there was a reference to Endgame during this. When Steve is asking about her world and her Steve, she turns around and says, "No, I don't think I will," which is what Steve Rogers said to Sam at the very end of Endgame when giving him the shield. They get attacked by Yellow Jackets. So in this world, Thor's army has a unit of Yellow Jackets, which we saw the Yellow Jackets in the first Ant-Man movie when Darren Cross made the Yellow Jacket suit. When Bucky is fighting with the crossbow, he references Clint, meaning Hawkeye has died in this world. So rip Hawkeye. Happy pulls out the Destroyer, which we did see back in the first Thor movie. Turns out the Red Skull in this universe is the Executioner, which I guess is pretty fitting. Bruce Banner has been locked in the cell this entire time. Captain Carter ends up getting captured and put in jail. And I love how she's like, "I'm Captain Carter," and stands up and just breaks the chains because she's going to be continuing the fight no matter what. Again, showing what kind of hero she is. Even finding that Bruce Banner is in the cells as well, breaking him out and getting the Hulk to help fight. Which in this, it seems like Bruce has more control over the Hulk than he normally does. And the Hulk also wants to get the hell out of here because he doesn't like this universe either. When they do the raid and they're fighting, Captain America does have his shield from Infinity War, which was kind of like the first hint that this was a What If Infinity War episode because he had those shields. But the whole scenes of them fighting were pretty cool. I really liked seeing that Hulk versus Happy Hogan. The Hulk should have been able to defeat Happy Hogan with no problem, but you could really see the different strength levels they had as well. Because even though Happy Hogan was getting some hits on him, Hulk was still standing right back up without really taking any damage. And overall, the fight scenes were just really fun, watching Steve go against Happy, having Bucky go against the Executioner, Red Skull, just having mass chaos going on around them. And then of course you had to have Captain Carter going against Thor, the King, who pulls out a freaking vibranium sword that was given to him by the King of Wakanda, which would have been most likely T'Challa at this time. Scarlet Witch and Nick Fury betray him because they know that Captain Carter can help fix their world and lets her take the scepter for herself. And it turns out the device that Tony Stark made for the Infinity Stone was an Iron Man gauntlet, because the Infinity Stone went directly where he would have his pulse shooters come from, and I thought that was really cool. And that's when we get the reveal that this was a What If Infinity War episode, because while Steve was fighting Thanos in Wakanda during Infinity War, he hit the time stone, sending him back in time and causing this rift in reality. And I really like how it started with Peggy not being able to give him up either, because she couldn't lose him again. Even though it wasn't her Steve, she still felt bad sending him away. But Steve, knowing they had to do it, even getting lines where Peggy's like,
"We never get a happy ending."
Because literally in her What If episode, Steve flew into the freaking Red Room and sacrificed himself, ruining that happy ending, even though he is still out there. When Steve turns around and says,
"I'm sure somewhere out there we do,"
that's a reference to the ending of Endgame, where Steve Rogers goes back in time and spends his life with Peggy Carter. But once Steve gets sent back, so do all the other characters, and Peggy Carter gets stuck in 1602 with no one else around her. Which I guess that means the Watcher didn't have eyes on her after that, and he couldn't save her. Because at least that's what they set it up with the previous scene earlier, where he was like, what if you get trapped? What if you die? What if you do this? That was a tease for that. While she's getting drinks, Supreme Strange comes in, gets her, and says, well, don't I have a story to tell you? And is recruiting her for another Multiverse Avengers team, which is going to be the next episode. There's a bunch of stuff we still haven't seen from this season yet. Like in the trailer, we saw Kahhori and Captain Carter together with Thanos. So it could be something with Thanos going on. Maybe that has ties into this, where when Steve Rogers was fighting Thanos' Infinity War, something happened and changed time and space for more than just this universe. Plus, we got to see a Rocket all beefed up with a bunch of rockets and a bunch of Dark Elves from Thor the Dark World, which we still haven't seen either yet. So there's a lot of characters that still have to come for the final episode, and I can't wait to see what happens and what they do. I definitely do like this season a lot more than season 1, so I like where it's leading into, and I'm really excited to see where this final goes, especially with Supreme Strange, Captain Carter, and possibly what other characters we might see from season 1. But let me know, what other Easter eggs or references did you notice during this episode? What did you think of it? And what do you think is going to happen in the final episode? Thanks for watching, and if you like my breakdown, make sure to hit the like and the subscribe button to stay up to date with all of them. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you tomorrow when we watch the final episode of What If Season 2.